My name is Leah Hill. I was 37 years old when I finally understood that silence can hurt a child just as much as cruelty. 3 years ago, on the morning of December 24th, my boyfriend, my son, and I drove from Denver to Colorado Springs for what was supposed to be a family Christmas. The drive usually takes an hour and a half. That morning, it felt endless. I sat behind the wheel, hands tight around it, watching the snow-dusted highway blur past. My boyfriend, Ethan, sat beside me, staring straight ahead. He wasn't scrolling his phone. He wasn't talking. That alone told me he felt it too, that familiar heaviness in the air. We only felt when we were headed toward my family. In the back seat, Dylan, just 7 years old, hugged a small, green-wrapped gift to his chest. He'd wrapped it himself for Grandma Eleanor. The edges were uneven, the tape crooked, but he'd worked on it for an entire afternoon. "Are we almost there?" he asked quietly. "Soon," I said, forcing a smile I didn't feel. As Colorado Springs came into view, my chest tightened. The oak-lined road leading to Grandma's house hadn't changed in decades. The same curve, the same tall trees, the same two-story house waiting at the end like a judge that never forgot your past mistakes. And then I saw it. A black SUV, already parked in the driveway. My older brother Derek had arrived first. I swallowed hard. "They're already here," Ethan said gently. "I know." That meant the tone of the day had already been set, without us. Dylan hopped out of the car, excitement lighting his face despite everything. He loved Grandma. He didn't understand favoritism yet, not fully. He only knew that Grandma listened to him, that she remembered his favorite books, that she never made him feel small. Inside, the house smelled like pine and cinnamon. A tall Christmas tree glowed in the corner, red and gold ornaments catching the light. Wrapped gifts sat neatly beneath it. My father, Richard, was already in his armchair, whiskey in hand. He glanced up when we entered and gave a single nod. No hug, no smile, no, "How was the drive?" I'd spent my whole life getting used to that. My mother, Patricia, was in the kitchen with my sister-in-law, Megan. She looked up briefly. "You're here," she said. "Put your things down and come help." She didn't look at Dylan. She didn't acknowledge Ethan at all. I felt that familiar pressure in my chest, the one that told me to endure, to stay quiet, to not make things worse. Dylan walked straight to the tree and carefully placed his gift underneath it. He lined it up just right, stepping back to admire it. That's when Tyler, my brother's 10-year-old son, barreled down the stairs. His eyes went straight to the gifts. And then he froze. A large blue box sat under the tree. Dylan's name was written clearly on the tag. I knew that box. Grandma had called me days earlier, asked what Dylan liked these days. I'd told her about the space shuttle Lego set, the one Dylan had stared at online for months, counting pieces like they were treasure. Tyler tugged on Derek's sleeve. "Dad, I want that one." Derek laughed. "We'll see, champ." Something about that made my stomach sink. Dinner started at 6. Grandma sat at the head of the table, smiling warmly when Dylan took the seat beside her. Throughout the meal, my brother's achievements were praised. His sales, his income, Tyler's basketball tryouts. No one asked Dylan a single question. No one, except Grandma. She leaned close, listening as Dylan talked about school and his dream of becoming an astronaut. In that moment, I believed, foolishly, that maybe this Christmas would be different. I was wrong, and I would pay for that hope in ways I never imagined. Grandma Eleanor's laugh was soft that night, thin, like paper that had been folded too many times, but still holding together through sheer will. She kept her hand on Dylan's shoulder as he talked, like she was anchoring him to something steady. Every time Dylan's eyes flicked toward the others, toward my father's stern face, toward my mother's distracted nods, Grandma would squeeze his shoulder gently and ask another question. And Dylan would brighten again. I watched it happen and felt both gratitude and shame crawl up my throat. Gratitude because my son still had someone in this family who truly saw him. Shame because I had brought him here anyway. Across the table, Derek leaned back in his chair like he owned the room. He always did. His voice carried like it was meant to be heard. Megan laughed too loudly at his jokes. Tyler ate with his elbows wide, taking up space, soaking in attention like it was his birthright. My father nodded at Derek's story about selling a $3 million mansion, eyes shining with pride. "That's my son," he said, like he was announcing a trophy. "Knows how to make money." My mother turned toward Derek with the same admiring expression she'd worn my whole childhood, the look that told me I was watching love but not receiving any of it. "Derek is so good," she said. "Always exceeds his targets." Ethan's knee brushed mine under the table. Not an accident. A warning. I kept my face neutral. I kept chewing. I kept swallowing down words that had been stuck in my throat for 37 years. Dylan's food sat mostly untouched. He took small bites, slow and careful, like he didn't want to do anything that might draw attention. Every now and then, he looked at me with that quiet question in his eyes. Am I doing it right? And every time I wanted to scream across the table, "You're perfect. You're not the problem. You've never been the problem." But I didn't say it out loud. I hated myself for that. After dinner, Grandma stood up slowly, one hand resting on the table to steady herself. Her knees weren't what they used to be. "I'm going to lie down for a little while," she said. "My old bones need a break." Dylan hopped up instantly. "Can I come with you, Great-Grandma?" She smiled. "Not yet, sweetheart. You open your gift first. I'll be back out." My father didn't even pretend to care that his own mother was tired. My mother just nodded absently, already clearing plates. Grandma turned toward me as she walked away. Her eyes held mine for a second longer than normal. It was a look I couldn't fully translate. Part apology, part warning. Like she knew. Like she'd known for years. The moment she disappeared down the hallway, the atmosphere changed. It was subtle at first, like a room losing warmth. My father straightened in his chair, whiskey glass clinking softly as he set it down. Derek rose from the table with that confident swagger that always made me feel 13 again. "All right," Derek said, "let's do presents." Everyone gathered around the Christmas tree. Lights blinked red and gold on their faces, making the room look festive, and somehow crueler for it. This was Grandma's tradition. Each grandkid went to the tree, found the gift with their name, and opened it themselves. Tyler practically dove into the pile first, rummaging loudly through the boxes. He ripped tags aside like he was searching for buried treasure, then yanked out a big one. His eyes widened. He tore through the paper with no patience, cardboard scraping the floor. A brand new gaming console. Tyler shrieked like he'd won the lottery. Megan clapped and squealed. Derek threw his arm around his son's shoulders with pride. My father's face softened in that way it never did for me. "That's my grandson," he said warmly. My mother beamed. "Oh, Tyler, you deserve it." I waited, stupidly, for someone to look at Dylan with the same warmth. No one did. Dylan stood at the edge of the circle, hands clasped together, rocking slightly on his heels. He glanced at me. I smiled and nodded. "Go ahead." He walked to the tree slowly, scanning for his name tag. The blue box stood out immediately, bigger than most, wrapped neatly with a clean bow. Dylan lifted it carefully like it was fragile. The tag read, Dylan Bennett. Grandma had always used the family name. It was her way of saying, "You belong here, even if they make you feel like you don't." Dylan's eyes lit up. His little fingers trembled as he turned the box, like he was afraid it would disappear. I knew what it was. I knew that exact weight. I knew the way Grandma had sounded on the phone, almost excited, when she said, "He'll love it." Dylan took one step back toward his seat, and Tyler moved. He stepped directly in Dylan's path, blocking him with the confidence of a kid who had never been told no in his entire life. "Give it here," Tyler said. Dylan blinked. "What?" Tyler jabbed a finger at the blue box. "I want that one." The room went quiet, but not in a shocked way. In a waiting way. Like everyone was holding their breath to see what Dylan would do, what he would allow. Dylan clutched the box tighter. "This is mine. My name is on it." Tyler's face twisted. "I don't care." Dylan took a half step back, shoulders stiff. His voice was small but clear. "No." The word hung in the air like a match near gasoline. I felt Ethan shift beside me, his jaw tightening. Derek chuckled under his breath, like this was adorable. Then my brother stepped forward, putting a heavy hand on Dylan's shoulder. Not gentle, not kind. His voice dropped into that cold tone he used when he wanted obedience without debate. "Dylan," Derek said, "be good. Give it to Tyler. You can pick something else." Dylan stared up at him, confusion spreading across his face like ink in water. "But Great-Grandma got this for me," Dylan said. "She asked what I wanted." Derek's mouth tightened. My father pushed himself up from his chair, already irritated. "Dylan," Richard barked. "Listen to the adults. Give it to Tyler." My son's eyes flicked to me, fast, pleading, terrified. And in that instant, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Dylan wasn't just afraid of being forced to share. He was afraid that I would let it happen, that I would stand there like everyone else. That fear broke something in me. I stood up. My heart hammered so loudly I could hear it in my ears. "Dad," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady, "that's Dylan's gift. Grandma bought it specifically for him. There's no reason he should give it to Tyler." My father turned toward me slowly, like a storm building. "You're talking back to me?" he snapped. I lifted my chin. My hands were shaking, but I kept them at my sides so no one could see. This isn't about a toy, I said. It's about fairness. Dylan has the right to keep his own gift. For a split second, there was silence. Then my father's face flushed, red rising up his neck, like rage was physically climbing his skin. I challenged him, not as a child, not as a daughter begging, as a mother defending her son. And I could feel the room shifting, everyone waiting to see how Richard Bennett would punish a woman who dared to stand. My father's hand reached toward the side table, toward a glass filled with red wine. At first, I thought he was just grabbing it to drink, to calm himself. Then his arm pulled back, and in one decisive motion, he threw it straight into Dylan's face. The sound came first. A sharp splash, thick, wet, unmistakable. Red wine exploded across the air and hit Dylan full in the face. For a split second, my brain refused to understand what my eyes were seeing. Wine ran through his hair, soaked his eyelashes, slid down his cheeks and chin, dripping onto the hardwood floor. Drops stained his sweater. The smell hit a moment later, sharp, sour, adult. Dylan didn't scream. He didn't cry. He didn't even blink. He just stood there in the middle of the living room, Christmas lights glowing behind him, clutching that blue gift box to his chest like it was the only solid thing left in the world. Time froze. I felt like I'd been punched in the lungs. My body locked in place, legs heavy, arms useless, mouth open, but no sound coming out. My ears rang. My heart slammed so hard it hurt. 7 years old. My father had just thrown wine in my 7-year-old son's face. Dylan's eyes were wide, not wet with tears, just stunned, confused, like he couldn't understand how something so cruel could come from someone who was supposed to love him. My first instinct was to run to him. My second was rage, hot, violent, uncontrollable. But before I could move, my mother stepped forward, not toward Dylan, not with a towel, not with comfort. She looked at my son the way you look at a child who spilled something on the carpet, and in a soft, almost gentle scolding tone, she said, "This is what happens when you don't listen. Next time, remember to obey Grandpa." Her words landed harder than the wine. I heard a sharp inhale behind me. Ethan. I felt something inside me crack. Then Tyler moved. He reached out and yanked the Lego box straight from Dylan's stunned hands. "Just took it." The boy grinned, clutching the box like a trophy he'd won fair and square. No one stopped him. Not Derek. Not Megan. Not my parents. Megan looked away, suddenly very interested in the tree. Derek smirked like this was all perfectly reasonable. And in that moment, a horrible truth settled deep in my bones. My son had just been humiliated in front of the entire family. And to them, this wasn't abuse. It was entertainment. It was order being restored. I broke free of whatever paralysis had held me and rushed to Dylan. I dropped to my knees, my sleeve immediately soaking red as I wiped his face. Wine coated my hands. My chest burned. Dylan finally looked at me. Still no tears. Just pain. Pure, silent pain. Ethan was there in an instant, pulling Dylan into his arms. I felt Ethan's body shaking, not with fear, but with fury he was barely containing. I stood up slowly. Every nerve in my body felt like it was on fire. "What the hell did you just do?" I shouted. My voice echoed through the room, sharp and broken. My father didn't flinch. "I taught him a lesson," Richard said coldly. "If you don't know how to raise your kid, then I'll do it for you." Something snapped. I stepped forward until I was standing inches from him. "Teaching?" I said, my voice shaking with disbelief. "You call throwing wine in a child's face teaching? Are you insane?" Before my father could answer, Derek jumped in. "Leah, stop being so dramatic," he scoffed. "It's just wine. Tyler gets punished all the time, and he's fine." I spun toward him. "Shut up, Derek," I screamed. "Your son just stole my child's gift." Derek laughed. Actually laughed. "My kid didn't steal anything," he said smugly. "He took what he wanted. Your brat being stubborn deserved to be taught a lesson." My hands clenched into fists. I had never wanted to hit someone more in my life. Before I could speak again, my father stepped beside Derek, shoulder to shoulder, like they were a united front. "You've always been ungrateful," Richard said, his voice calm and cruel. "You were never as good as your brother. And your kid? He's not as good as Tyler. That's just the truth." Those words sliced straight through me. I could take his hatred toward me. I had my whole life. But dragging my son into it? I felt something cold settle in my chest. "I don't care what you think about me," I said, each word deliberate, "but you will never hurt my son again. This isn't over." Richard laughed. "You threatening me?" he sneered. "What can you do? This is my house." Behind him, I noticed Ethan sitting Dylan down on a chair. Ethan's phone was in his hand. He caught my eye for half a second. A silent message passed between us. I'm handling it. The argument kept spiraling. Voices overlapping, insults flying, years of resentment spilling out in ugly bursts. And none of us noticed the small figure standing quietly in the doorway. Until she spoke. No. The word wasn't loud, but it stopped everything. Grandma Eleanor stood there, one hand gripping the doorframe. She had seen it all. For a moment, no one moved. Grandma Eleanor stood in the doorway, her small frame outlined by the hallway light. Her back was slightly hunched with age, her hair thin and silver, but her eyes, those sharp, unwavering eyes, cut through the room like glass. She hadn't raised her voice. She hadn't needed to. My father turned slowly, irritation already forming on his face, until he realized who was standing there. Mom, he said stiffly, this doesn't concern you. Grandma didn't answer right away. She took one careful step forward, then another. Each step was slow, deliberate. 84 years old, her knees weak, but her will unbreakable. She walked past the Christmas tree, past the shattered sense of family, past Dylan still shaking in Ethan's arms. She stopped beside the table. On it sat another full glass of red wine. Grandma looked down at it. Her hand reached out. For a split second, I thought she was going to drink it. Instead, her fingers wrapped around the stem. Her hand didn't shake. She turned. My father was still facing me, mid-lecture, mid-righteous fury. Grandma stood behind him. 1 second. 2. 3. Then, just like him, she acted. The wine flew through the air and hit my father square in the face. Red splashed across his hair, his cheeks, his shirt. The room froze. My father stood there, stunned, mouth open, wine dripping down his face exactly the way it had done on Dylan's. Grandma lowered her arm and stared straight into his eyes. How does it feel, she asked calmly, to have wine thrown in your face, Richard? My father didn't speak. I don't think he could. In 62 years, no one had ever humiliated him like that, especially not his own mother. Grandma placed the empty glass back on the table with a soft clink. You are a grown man, she continued, her voice steady, and you just threw wine in the face of a 7-year-old child. And you call that teaching? Still silence. She turned slowly, looking at each person in the room. I taught school for over 30 years, she said. I've seen cruelty, neglect, and selfishness in many families. But tonight, I have never been more ashamed of my own. Derek opened his mouth. Grandma raised her hand. He closed it. She faced him directly. You stood there and watched your father bully a child. Then you allowed your son to steal his cousin's gift. What kind of man are you raising Tyler to be? Derek dropped his eyes. Grandma turned to my mother. Patricia, she said, you are a mother, a grandmother, and when your grandson was humiliated, you told him to obey. Do you have any conscience left? My mother staggered back a step, her face drained of color. Then Grandma turned back to my father. Richard, she said quietly, I raised you, I fed you, I educated you, and I failed to teach you how to be a decent human being. That was when my father's arrogance finally cracked. Grandma straightened. This house is still in my name, she said firmly. I am not dead yet, and I decide who stays. My father's voice shook. Mom! She cut him off. You will apologize to Dylan, right now. The room held its breath. My father's jaw clenched, his face flushed again, pride fighting shame. I will not kneel to a child, he roared. Grandma nodded once. Then get out of my house, she said, all of you. My father stepped forward. You're old. You don't know what you're doing. Derek joined in. You need us, Grandma. Grandma smiled, a cold, fearless smile. I have lived alone here for 15 years, she said. I don't need bullies to care for me. Sirens wailed outside. My father froze. The front door opened moments later as 2 police officers entered. The lead officer looked around, eyes sharp. Who called about child abuse? Grandma stepped forward. I did. She pointed to Dylan. My great-grandson had wine thrown in his face. The officers moved quickly. My father protested. Derek followed. Both were escorted out. Blue and red lights flashed across the walls. When it was over, Grandma turned to my mother and Megan. Leave, she said, tonight. They did. Grandma knelt in front of Dylan, wiping his face gently. I won't let anyone hurt you again, she whispered. Dylan finally cried. And for the first time in my life, someone had stood between me and my father. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay on the couch in Grandma Eleanor's living room, staring up at the ceiling, while the old wall clock ticked steadily, each second echoing like a heartbeat slowly returning to normal after a near-fatal shock. Ethan sat on the floor beside the couch, his back against it, one hand resting protectively on Dylan's small foot as the boy slept curled up under a blanket. Dylan had cried himself to sleep in Ethan's arms. his sobs quiet and exhausted, like his little body had finally released everything it had been holding in all evening. I kept replaying the moment. The splash of wine, Dylan's frozen eyes, my mother's voice telling him to obey, and then Grandma, standing tall, fearless, unapologetic. For 37 years, I had waited for someone in my family to say, "This is wrong." I never imagined it would be an 84-year-old woman who finally did what I had been too afraid to do. The next morning, I woke to the sound of soft footsteps. Dylan stood at the bottom of the stairs, clutching his old teddy bear, eyes uncertain. "Mom?" he asked quietly. I sat up instantly and opened my arms. He ran to me and hugged me tight, his small body trembling. Then he looked up at me and asked the question that shattered my heart completely. "Mom, did I do something wrong?" I hugged him harder, my voice breaking. "No, no, sweetheart, you did everything right. You were brave. I'm so proud of you." He was quiet for a moment. Then he whispered, "Why does Grandpa hate me?" I swallowed. "He doesn't hate you," I said carefully. "He doesn't know how to love the right way. And that's his fault, not yours." 2 months later, I stood in a courtroom. My father sat at the defendant's table, his face stone cold. Derek sat beside him. Neither looked at me. I testified. My hands shook, my voice wavered, but I told the truth. The judge found my father guilty of misdemeanor child abuse. He was sentenced to supervised probation, mandatory anger management, and banned from contacting Dylan for 5 years. He was also ordered to pay for Dylan's counseling. Derek was charged as an accomplice, sentenced to community service, fined, and barred from contacting Dylan for 3 years. Some people said the punishment was too harsh. Others said it wasn't enough. I didn't care. My son was safe. After the trial, Grandma rewrote her will. The house would go to Dylan and me. My father and brother were removed completely. A year later, my mother came to my door alone, eyes red, voice shaking. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything." I told her the truth. "We're not ready to forgive yet." 3 years have passed. Dylan is 11 now, still gentle, but no longer afraid to speak up. Grandma is 87, slower now, but sharper than ever. Every month we visit her. As for my father, he lives alone, still angry, still convinced he was right. And me? I finally learned that protecting your child sometimes means breaking a family. And I would do it again, every single time.